So, dear students, you are welcome again in this class. Now we will discuss the role of calcium, magnesium, sulfur, secondary nutrients, and iron, manganese, and boron. Micronutrients, try to finish the major roles or functions of these nutrients in plant growth and yield. And we will see the deficiency symptoms, areas where such deficiencies are there, causes of deficiency, and corrective measures, how we can correct them. So, what is rock? You are aware of the rock. Mottling is important. Many times you will listen mottling. Mottling kind of symptoms of nutrient deficiency. Spots or blotches. Mottling means spots or blotches of different color. These are spots of different color or shades of color interspersed, means kind of mosaic interspersed with the dominant color. So there is a mosaic of spots with different colors or shades of a color. I read again, mottling is spots or blotches. Blotches are also spots. Blotches of different color or shades of color interspersed means mixed with the dominant color. That is mottling. pH, and what is rosetting? Rosetting, R-O-S-E-T-T-I-N-G, rosetting. In some cases, you get rosetting symptoms. What is rosetting? Tanmay?
Yes, sir.
What is rosetting? Mottling, now you know.
Sir, rosetting means kind of necrosis.
I think it is not like that. Rosetting means...
Sir, rosetting type means bushy type of plant, like shorter internode and leaves become erect.
Absolutely true. Absolutely correct. So it becomes bushy because of reduced internodes, and the branches are come very close. So that is your rosette appearance. Good. pH dependent charge. That portion of the total charge of the soil particles that is affected by and varies with the change in pH. That is your necrosis, you know. Siderophores, or you can call them phytosiderophores. If they are released from plants, then they are phytosiderophores, because siderophores can also be released by other organisms. So siderophores are a non-porphyrin metabolite secreted by certain microorganism that forms a highly stable coordination compound with iron. Means they make chelate or chelate. They are also released by plants. Protein and root nodules, you know it. Now, secondary nutrients are, of course, calcium, magnesium, and sulfur, and they play no secondary role in plant nutrition. They are as important as any other major nutrient, like NPK, but they are comparatively required in less amount as compared to nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. But sulfur and potassium removal is almost same in plants. Calcium, we start with the calcium. Availability is adequate for most crop. If your soils are neutral or slightly alkaline, then there is no issue of calcium deficiency. And as already known to you, that most of the inorganic carbon in soil is in the calcium carbonates. So deficiency occurs on acid sandy soils from which available calcium has been leached out, and on strongly acid peat and muck soils where total soil calcium is low. So it is problem of mostly soil acidity. High exchangeable soil sodium may depress plant uptake of calcium. So this sodium can compete with the uptake of calcium. Role of calcium in plants rank with magnesium, phosphorus, and sulfur in the group of least abundant macronutrient in plant. It is absorbed by plant roots as divalent cation, Ca2+. It is part of architecture of cell wall. So it gives strength to the cell wall and membranes. So it is mostly accumulated in the cell wall area. and gives strength to the plant against lodging. Cell division, it is important for cell division, growth, root lengthening, and activation of inhibition of enzymes. Calcium is immobile in the phloem. You can see deficiency, reduced growth, death of growing tips. Death of growing tips, blossom and root of tomato. Blossom and root of tomato. Poor fruit development and appearance. You can see the size of the potato is or any product may not be uniform. So it affects the quality with respect to size. Deficiency symptoms of calcium are seen first on growing tips and youngest leaves, so on growing points. This is applicable to all immobile nutrients. Leaves are small, distorted, cup-shaped, crinkled, and dark green. They cease growing, become disorganized, twisted, and under severe deficiency die. So there may be death of the leaves. Groundnut shells may be hollow. Groundnut shells may be fruit, that is food, may be hollow or poorly filled, incomplete kernel development. So you can see different symptoms of calcium deficiency in growing. You can see there is reduced growth and there may be death of the growing points. And you can see that the two leaves are joined. They are glued together, the tips of the leaf. Now you can see this is calcium deficiency in rice. Tips of the youngest leaves may become chlorotic white. These kind of symptoms are calcium deficiency. So actually many times you cannot be very sure about deficiency and toxicity symptoms. Sometimes toxicity symptom of one element or nutrient may resemble the deficiency symptom of another. So they are just very, very indicative, so just general idea. And many times you cannot be sure that this is because of this particular element. Blossom and root of tomato, you can see it is kind of decaying of this portion of the tomato. Blossom means flower. The flower of a seed plant. That is the meaning of the blossom. The mass of such flowers on a single plant. The mass of such flowers on a single plant is also blossom. The state of bearing flowers is also blossom. A peak period of stage of development, that is again blossoming. A peak period or stage of development, develop or come to promising stage. The period of greatest prosperity or productivity. So these are all meanings of the blossom. Meanings of the blossom. You can see calcium deficiency in banana and discoloration in apple due to calcium deficiency. Tips end of leaves glued together. So two adjoining leaves can join their tips and ladder-like structure. This is just first step, second step, and so on. You can see here also. First step, second step. So these tips are glued together. A ladder-like appearance due to calcium deficiency in maize. This is shown in maize, but it can happen in other cereals also. Like you can see in pulse millet and then sugarcane, this calcium deficiency. So calcium excess may cause deficiency in either magnesium or potassium. Sodium we don't need. Areas affected by deficiency, acid soils and corrective measure, correct the soil pH. So simple, you correct the soil pH. Then magnesium occupies the central spot in chlorophyll, thus vital for photosynthesis. Plant cannot remain green if your magnesium is not there. Activation of enzymes, energy transfer, maintenance of electrical balance. All these calcium, magnesium, potassium, sodium, they are involved in electrical balance in the plant cells or in the plant systems. Production of proteins, metabolism of carbohydrates. Magnesium is mobile within the plants. Therefore, deficiency will come on lower leaves or old leaves. Redly translocated deficiency symptom appear on old leaves. Intervenol chlorosis of the older leaves, in which the veins remain green, but the area between them turns yellow. Intervenol chlorosis due to magnesium deficiency. Poor fruit development. You can see on the right side, on the left side, you can see the symptoms start on the lower leaves. And if you enlarge these symptoms, they look like this. So intervenol chlorosis on midsection of the leaf on this part. Intervenol chlorosis covers the entire leaf. Then it spreads to other side towards margin. And you can see in the end, it is like this, necrosis in intervenol areas of the leaf. Now you can also see these kind of symptoms in mung bean, magnesium deficiency symptoms. Veins are green and intervenal area is yellow. You can see in cotton also. In cotton, it is interesting symptom. You can see that normally this should be deficiency symptom of phosphorus actually. Phosphorus, but this is for potassium in cotton. Magnesium deficient plants showing reddening of the lower leaves. Reddening of the lower leaves. So they are quite distinguishable. You can see reddening of leaf margins advancing into intervenal areas. So veins are green and reddening of the intervenal areas. Magnesium excess, high concentration tolerant in plant. However, imbalance with calcium and potassium may reduce the growth. Now, sulfur. Sulfur is really very, very important from point of view of application now. Deficiency of sulfur is being experienced in the crop production. So it is becoming more limiting in crop production. Higher crop yields require more sulfur. Increased use of high analysis fertilizer containing little or no sulfur. Now, if you see for last 15-20 years, the consumption of DAP is increasing, but consumption of single superphosphate has declined. So because of this, now we are having, this is one of the reasons that sulfur deficiency is being experienced, and reduced amount of atmospheric sulfur fallout from the sky, reduced soil reserves from organic matter losses. More sulfur in the soil is tied up to organic matter and cannot be used by the plant until it is converted to sulfate. Role of sulfur in plants. It is part of the 3 essential amino acids, cysteine, cysteine, and methionine. Formation of chlorophyll and activation of enzyme. It has major role. Formation of chlorophyll and activation of enzymes. Part of vitamins, biotin, thiamine. Most plant, the concentration is 0.2 to 0.3% of the dry matter. Needed for formation of mustard oil, sulfhydryl linkages that are the source of pungency in onion also. Required by crops in amount comparable to phosphorus. Initial yellowing of young leaves is spreading to whole plant. Similar symptom to N deficiency but occurs on younger leaves. Sulfur deficiency symptoms on young leaves come first. Resembles nitrogen deficiency. They come on young leaves. Plants are small with short and slender stalks. Growth is retarded and maturity in cereals is delayed. You can see uniform chlorosis of the younger leaves due to sulfur deficiency. This is in black gram, sulfur deficiency, groundnut, and then cotton. Very clearly shown sulfur deficiency in these crops. Now, areas affected by deficiency: light texture soils with low organic matter. Low organic matter means you will get less sulfur on mineralization. And light texture soils means sulfate. Sulfate can leach down in light texture soils. In canal irrigated areas also because of increased pH. Areas where sulfur-free fertilizers are used, acid soils are more prone to sulfur deficiency due to stronger absorption of sulfate. Now, what can be done? Gypsum can be applied on soil test basis. If information is not available, general recommendation is 125 to 150 kg gypsum, or use single superphosphate fertilizer. So actually gypsum is the cheapest source of sulfur, containing about, how much sulfur is there in gypsum? How much sulfur is there in gypsum? Anybody? Yeah, Shubham. Shubham. Kavya.
Sir,
Yeah.
maybe 12, sir.
12 is, I think, too low. 12 is too low.
Sorry,
Yeah.
18.6.
16 to 18, I think. Normally it is 16 to 18%. You can check it. 16 to 18% sulfur. But interesting fact is that it is very cheap. It is cheaper than all other sources, or I can say it is cheapest source of sulfur and quite effective. And also government provides subsidy on this fertilizer, gypsum, to ameliorate your soils. Now, after this calcium, magnesium, and sulfur, now we come to iron. So, synthesis of chlorophyll, carbohydrate production, cell respiration, chemical reduction of nitrate and sulfate, and in nitrogen assimilation. So, these are the major role of iron. Other roles are that it is part of some heme proteins, and it is important for enzyme activity. So you can see some enzymes and other proteins in which iron functions in plant metabolism. So you can see it is important for catalase protein, or catalase is enzyme also, peroxidases, lag hemoglobin, ferrodoxin, ferridoxin, aconitase, superoxide. So part of many enzymes which are involved in a lot of biochemical reactions in the plant system. So you can see the value of iron. It is very important in plant system. Iron deficiency, initial distinct yellow or white areas. So particularly in younger leaves, you will have initial distinct yellow or white areas between veins of young leaves, leading to spots of dead leaf tissue. In severe deficiency, the young leaves turn entirely white. Iron excess, possible bronzing of leaves with tiny brown spots. So iron excess can occur and it can reach the toxicity level, particularly in strongly acid soils. Iron uptake by plants. Uptake of iron appears to be mediated by the plant, because many times, as you know, in case of rice, if it is not in ferrous form, it is ferrous form is available under reduced conditions or waterlogged conditions where rice is happy. But if you drain out the water, your conditions become aerobic and iron is converted into ferric form. Then rice is not able to get sufficient iron and it suffers from iron deficiency. But at the same time, wheat is also a cereal plant. It is just like rice, but still it is able to take up iron under aerobic condition. That means some mechanism is there in wheat, which is not there in rice, to remove iron from the soil. So iron appears to be acquired in sufficient quantities for growth, even though it may not be readily available. Plants use two distinct strategies to solubilize and absorb iron from the soil. So two different strategies are used by plant to take up iron from the soil. One is plant reduce ferric. Ferric can be reduced. So what plant can do? It complexes at the root surface and absorb the iron produced by the root associated reduction. So what can be done? The root will help to reduce the ferric to ferrous. So this may be possible in plants which are iron use efficient, or varieties which are iron use efficient. They may release some hydrogen and that can reduce the ferric to ferrous. So complexes at the root surface and absorb the ferrous ion produced by this root associated reduction. It includes all dicots and the monocots not included in the OS. So majority of the plant does this kind of pathway to remove iron. The next is plants excrete specific iron binding. Iron means Fe3. Fe3 binding low molecular weight organic polydentate ligands known as phytosidrophores. So phytosidrophores are released by some plants which solubilize Fe3 ions and make them available for absorption, restricted to the grass family. So this is second mechanism. So these are the two important mechanism of iron uptake. I advise you to go into the details of these two mechanisms, or I may have taught you in another course on rice, if I remember. So what is required if you want to know in detail, get any good textbook of plant physiology, or you can send me email, those who want to study in detail. So this is very interesting mechanism of iron uptake by plants. Iron deficiency symptoms in rice, you can see it looks like this, or I can show you more deficiency symptoms. In maize, you can see iron deficiency symptoms. In groundnut, iron deficiency symptoms. In groundnut and soybean, these days we are experiencing more of these iron deficiency symptoms. So you may come across in your life if you visit your groundnut and if you visit groundnut and soybean fields, they are quite sensitive crops to iron deficiency. So whenever you see that younger leaves are yellow, you can suspect at first that it could be iron deficiency. And see the color of leaves is getting whiter. It is converted to yellow, and then from yellow it can become white, and afterwards it will become brown, and then it will dry. The leaves will dry completely. You can see symptoms in rice, younger leaves, yellowing, whiteness in the leaves is observed. You can see here, in this case, you can see the area which is in the beginning is having more deficiency symptom than the area which is in the background. Because in the background, it is low-lying area where water is there. But in this part, water is not staying. Therefore, iron deficiency. If water had stayed here, that means ferric iron could have been converted to ferrous, and then you could not have experienced this deficiency. So you can see very severe deficiency of iron in rice. This is in direct seeded rice, iron deficiency in patches. This in patches, areas which are green, they must be having better water, more water than these areas. Therefore, they are green. In transplanted rice, you can see iron deficiency symptoms. Now, areas affected by iron deficiency, soils with coarse texture. So these coarse texture soils are most of the time blamed for nutrient deficiencies. Any nutrient, calcium, magnesium, even sulfur, or organic matter, nitrogen. These coarse texture soil point is always there. Soils with coarse texture or sandy soils, high pH, calcium carbonate, and low organic matter. These soils may suffer from iron deficiency. Most common in highly permeable coarse soils, soils irrigated with sodic water, soils with high accumulation of heavy metals, nickel, lead, cadmium, zinc inhibit uptake and translocation of iron. So therefore, soil pollution is also not good. If your soils are polluted with heavy metals, and these some of them will be removed and they will compete with essential plant nutrients like iron for their uptake. Now, reasons for iron deficiency, highly permeable soils cannot pond the water. If water ponding is there, most conditions are there, then iron deficiency will not be there. Soils may not be deficient in iron, but it remains unavailable form. That is important, ferric form. Otherwise, as you know that soil is by weight, 6% is iron. So soil has a lot of iron. It is just question of iron availability. How much of that total iron is available or how much is in ferrous form. Then corrective measures, what can be done? One is that ensure prolonged ponding of irrigation water. But this can be done in rice and some aquatic crops. But can you do it for groundnut or soybean? You cannot do it. So what can be done in groundnut and soybean? Spray iron sulfate. Spraying, foliar spraying of iron sulfate can be done. If applied to soil under oxidized condition or in alkaline soil, it gets converted to unavailable forms. As you know that if you apply fertilizer in soil, iron sulfate, fertilizer in soil, it quickly converted to ferric form if aerobic conditions are there. So normally response to fertilizer, solid fertilizer, they are applied to soil and response is not achieved. You will not get response up to 250 kilogram iron sulfate per hectare. Too much of iron sulfate you apply, response is very little. So better to go for foliar spray of 0.5 to 2% solution of ferrous sulfate, depending upon the stage of the crop. This is for rice, but normally it is 0.5% iron sulfate. In rice at advanced stage, say after transplanting, say 50-55 days after transplanting, you can go for 2% iron sulfate solution, but normally it is 0.5% during early growth stages. Green manuring with dhecha can be done. Manganese is another nutrient, micronutrient, and it is known to activate several enzymes, essential for splitting of water molecule during photosynthesis. Manganese is also important in nitrogen metabolism and in CO2 assimilation. CO2 assimilation is just your photosynthesis. Deficiency of manganese is intervenal yellowing or mottling of young leaves. Mottle means color with streaks or blotches of different shades. Manganese excess, older leaves have brown spots surrounded by a chlorotic circle or zone. Crinkle leaf of cotton is an example. You can see deficiency symptom in maize, in potato. Areas affected by deficiency of manganese: highly permeable coarse structure soils continuously under rice wheat system. In alkaline soils, reasons for deficiency: solubilization of manganese and its leaching to deeper layers during rice growing season, continuous cultivation of rice for 6 to 7 years, and depletion of manganese in surface layer. Corrective measures when manganese is deficient, the only option is spray of foliar spray. Like iron, manganese also gets converted to relatively unavailable form when applied to soil. So 3 to 4 sprays with 0.5% solution of manganese sulfate. Wheat grown after rice exhibit manganese deficiency after first irrigation. So then apply foliar spray 2 to 3 days before first irrigation. So many times we have observed that after rice, when you grow the wheat crop, it may have manganese deficiency. Durum wheat are highly susceptible to manganese deficiency than estimum wheat. So better to grow estimum wheat wherever you experience manganese deficiency. The last nutrient is your boron. Membrane integrity and cell wall, major role in membrane integrity and cell wall development, which affect permeability, cell division and extension. Pollen tube growth, which affects seed or fruit set and hence yield. So if your plants are deficient in boron, then the fertilization will be affected because the deficiency will lead to reduced pollen tube growth, and then pollen tube growth will not be able to fertilize the seed. Therefore, whenever boron deficiency is there, you will experience poor seed setting in crops where seed is economic part. So seed setting will be affected due to boron deficiency. It is the major deficiency result of boron. And where the deficiency occurs, boron points, growing points and meristematic tissues, younger part experience boron deficiency. They are affected first. Stem tips, root tips, new leaves, and flower buds are affected. Death of growing points. This is important symptom. and deformation of leaves with areas of discoloration. Excess boron. Boron toxicity can happen. Leaf tips become yellow, followed by necrosis. Leaves get a scorched appearance and later follow. So you can see boron deficiency, seed setting or seed filling or grain filling is affected. You can see in maize, you can see very few grains are there in the cob due to boron deficiency. And you know about this cauliflower, some disease is there. What is the name of the disease in cauliflower due to boron deficiency?
Whiptail, sir.
No.
Whiptail browning, sir.
Yeah, browning. Browning. Whiptail is, I think, magnesium, molybdenum.
Molybdenum deficiency, yes, sir.
Good. And you can see browning of curd. You said very rightly. Browning of curd and lessens in the pith of cauliflower. This is boron deficiency. You see the tip of the cob is not having any grains here, and the blackening of potato tubers. You can see this is also boron deficiency, like you have seen browning of curd in cauliflower. And then you can see this bud leaves develop a bronze color in this case. Crowded leaves at the top of the plant. Here, it is kind of rosetting, you see. Leaf margins cup downwards. These leaf margins cup downward. So these are symptoms in sunflower, I think. Is it sunflower? Now you see symptoms in maize. Puckering on affected leafy tightly gather or contract into wrinkles or small folds. So you can see puckering is this kind of overgrowth on the leaves, and transparent stripes on affected leaf. Coarse texture soils are deficient in boron, acid soils, boron toxicity, highly alkaline soils containing high content of free calcium carbonate, indiscriminate and regular application of boron fertilizer. So application rate of boron is very low, hardly say half kg, 1 kg boron per hectare. Too low application rates are there in soil. Points to remember about boron. These are just last 2 slides are there, where you can see inadequate boron supply represent one of the economically most important micronutrient disorder worldwide. Under high rainfall conditions, sandy soils, heavily weathered or acidic soil, boron can be leached easily and boron deficiency severely limits yield. On the other hand, under low rainfall conditions or in fields dominated by alkaline or organic soils, boron often accumulate to levels that are toxic. So toxicity can also be there. And lastly, irrigation with high boron containing water. I think you know in irrigation water quality, besides EC and some other salts, you got boron also. So boron may come from irrigation. Proper drainage is required. Irrigation with high boron containing water or without proper drainage also can increase topsoil boron levels and reduce the crop yields. Window between insufficient and toxic boron levels can be quite small. Plants respond to an inadequate boron supply with a large number of anatomical, physiological, and biochemical alterations. Means their growth is affected. Growth of the plants is affected. So overall, in brief, I tried to give you idea about calcium, magnesium, sulfur, manganese, boron, and iron. So in the next lecture, I will try to cover the remaining micronutrients in brief and then switch over to the next topic. So still we have 2-3 minutes time. And, your questions, your suggestions, your point of view are welcome.